Okay, so this one's going to be talking about objects and DOM methods. So if you see, I went ahead and created a function called start, and on our inner body, I have an onload property called which calls back the function start, which is essentially saying when the body loads, um, start start the function start. So the function will not start until the body's done loading, which is how you want it. Um, you could also do body dot onload equal function if you wanted to do a anonymous function set inside a variable, or you could do window dot onload. Window dot onload and body dot onload are the same thing, but I just called my function start and gave it a name. And we're going to declare all our variables up top always. Never declare a variable inside a function, because then it'll give it a local scope and you won't be able to access it outside of the function. Let person equal curly braces, and the curly braces are for an object. So name colon the person's name, age colon the person's age, and the properties can be whatever you want it to be. So let's try console logging some stuff, and we can console log before the page load, before this function that occurs on page load, because the console doesn't really affect the page, but we don't want to include DOM methods before the page load, because that will corrupt your page, cause some issues, and maybe your stuff won't appear, or maybe it'll likely it won't appear, but it might also cause pretty big issues in your code. So you always want to, for DOM methods, you want to include it after body load, so like on body load or on window load. So to access the person's name, we're going to do person.name, and we get John. Let's try that again with person.age. So this syntax is just the object name followed by the property name. So object followed by property, and we get 40. So JavaScript is really cool because you can include nested objects within objects. And you may have sometimes seen the property in strings. Doesn't matter if it's a string or a a string or a non-string. The property doesn't really matter if it's a string because you can reference it either way. I just think it looks a lot better when it's not a string. But the value of the property, if it's words like this or like this, it does have to be in strings. And of course, double quotes or single quotes, it does not matter. So let's reference the person's title. So since this is a nested, you would go person, and then you would go to the employee reference, and then you would go to title. So person, employee reference, title, and let's command save. And you get product manager. You can also include functions. I'm going to make a self-invoking function. Haven't done this in a while, so it might not work perfectly. Okay. And if we want to call that, we have person, employee reference to go through. Sorry, no, it's not nested. So we just go person, and since this is not nested, we can go say hi. And that should call it. And you see in this console, alert, hello. See what would happen if we did not. So we didn't call console log it, so it didn't. So now it says hello in an alert box, and that's because we included the callback, um, the parentheses for the callback. If we want to include it as a method, we can console log it, just as we did before. But if we want to actually run the function, we would include the parentheses. Okay, so that's the basics of objects. Let's get started on DOM methods. So the first thing we want to do is document.get element by ID. And JavaScript is camel case, so it looks typically like this. So we're going to grab the ID of P1. So we're going to believe it's like this. And of course we see hello world over up top in our document. So what I did here was include the method get element by ID. I grabbed the ID, and then I gave the ID an inner HTML of hello world. So that's saying for a text element, give it some text here. So if we go into our elements, you see P1 has inside it has hello world. I'm just going to go back to our HTML page, and you see hello world is not here. That's because we inserted the hello world through the property inner HTML. Let's try it with the div D1. Okay, so we do the variable name followed by inner HTML. It did not work when I said D1 because I was using the ID name. and the ID name we want to put inside this get element by ID, and when we store it inside a variable, and we want to use the variable .inner HTML, and we should get it now. D1 is not defined. Let's check that out. Oh, because I saved it as a class. By class name. This is another method. So it was not in ID, it was a class. So you have to do document.getElement by class name. And since we know that there can be multiple different elements by the class name, we have to include an index value. By the way, DOM elements are not the same as arrays. They just have some properties that make them usable, workable like arrays. But maybe I'll include a link into more information about that in the document, in the description. So this is the first div with class 1. So it's gonna reach out to the first div. Of course, that's 0 index because we start from 0. And it's gonna give it a property. Sorry. Oh, okay, so typo. Document.getElements, since it can be multiple. And of course you see it is very cold outside. Let's say we went ahead and created multiple divs. And I'm just going to give each of them a different background style. Just so we see the difference. So for this we targeted the first div, so the 0 index. So we should see it is very cold outside with a background of red, and that works fine. Let's try to target the second one. So we would go to the first index, since of course we start by 0, and this gives it a blue attribute, blue background. So this is really good for dynamically adding content. We could also go ahead and create an element. So let's create an H1. Header equals document dot create element. Sorry, that's camel case, so lowercase c. And we're going to create an H1. So now we're going to go ahead and create some text. So we're going to create a text node. And then we're going to append the text node to the H1 element through this syntax. And if I'm going too fast, just take a minute and copy this stuff down and try it out yourself. And now we're going to append the header, the H1 element, to the document by doing so document.body. And this should run properly. We should see hi everyone. And we do see hi everyone as an H1. And if we go into our elements, we see H1 hi everyone. And that's it for now for DOM methods. I believe the next video might be more on objects.